the 27th of November 1988, a woman walked into a police station in Saitama. She told them her daughter had not come home. Her daughter was 17. Over the next 6 weeks, that daughter telephoned her mother 3 times. 3 times she said the same thing. "I ran away. I'm safe. Stop looking." Every one of those calls came from an upstairs room in an ordinary family house, 1 town away. Other people were living in that house at the time. Her name was Junko Furuta. Almost everything you can find about her is about the way she died. This film is about the 40 days she was still alive. Stories like hers happen all over the world, and most are never told right. If you want the ones the world overlooks, subscribe. Before she became known around the world through headlines, Junko Furuta was simply a teenager growing up in Japan. She attended high school in Misato, Saitama Prefecture. Friends described her as cheerful, hardworking, and kind. She had a reputation for being responsible and dependable. Like many teenagers, her life revolved around school, friendships, and plans for the future. Japan in the late 1980s was experiencing enormous economic growth. Cities were expanding. Technology was advancing. The country projected an image of order and safety. For many people, it was difficult to imagine that something so horrific could happen in an ordinary residential area. But behind that image of stability existed a darker reality. Youth gangs were becoming a growing concern. Some groups of teenagers were involved in intimidation, violence, and criminal activity. Among them were several young men whose lives had already begun moving in a dangerous direction. On November 25, 1988, Junko was cycling home from her evening job. It should have been an ordinary evening. Instead, she encountered 4 teenage boys. They knew the area. They understood how to intimidate and control others. The 4 teenagers were Hiroshi Miyano, Joe Ogura, Shinji Minato, Yasushi Watanabe. They were between 16 and 18 years old. At the time, they were involved in delinquent activities and associated with youth gangs. That night, they targeted Junko. They forced her into a situation where she had very little ability to protect herself. And then they made a decision that would define one of Japan's most infamous crimes. They took her away. Junko was taken to a house in Ayase in Adachi Ward, Tokyo, the family home of one of the perpetrators, Shinji Minato. A suburban family home in a bustling neighborhood was where the horror unfolded. For the next 40 days, Junko Furuta remained trapped inside that house. What happened during those weeks would later become known as one of the most disturbing criminal cases in Japan's history. The details revealed during the investigation showed a prolonged period of cruelty and abuse carried out by the 4 teenagers responsible. Junko was isolated from the outside world. She was repeatedly assaulted and harmed. She was deprived of basic necessities and subjected to unimaginable suffering. During that time, Junko repeatedly searched for opportunities to escape and tried to reach the outside world. But each attempt failed, and the people holding her continued to move freely outside, convincing others that nothing was wrong. One of the most haunting aspects of Junko Furuta's case was not only the actions of the 4 teenagers, but the silence surrounding them. According to reports from the investigation, Shinji Minato's parents became aware that Junko was being held there. They later claimed that they were afraid to challenge their son, who was violent. The alleged Yakuza connection belonged not to him but to one of the ringleaders and was used to intimidate. Fear, loyalty, intimidation, and a lack of courage all played a role. But whatever the reasons were, the result was the same. Junko remained trapped. While she was fighting to survive, the people around her had chances to act. Her parents had already reported her missing, and others were moving in and out of the house. Yet the alarm was never truly raised. And those opportunities were missed. After weeks of captivity, Junko's condition continued to deteriorate. On January 4th, 1989, after 40 days, her life came to an end. But the cruelty did not stop there. The teenagers responsible attempted to conceal what they had done and hide the evidence of their crime. They placed Junko's body inside a large container, filled it with concrete, and abandoned it at a construction site in Tokyo. They believed this would hide the truth, but it would eventually become one of the details that made the case infamous around the world. When investigators eventually uncovered the remains, the discovery shocked Japan. The image of a young girl hidden inside a block of concrete became a symbol of the horror surrounding the case. The media referred to it as the concrete-encased girl case. But beyond the shocking headline was a deeper tragedy. A teenager had disappeared. A family had spent weeks searching for answers, and a series of decisions by multiple people allowed the crime to continue. The discovery would finally reveal what had happened to Junko Furuta. But it also raised a question that would remain for decades. How could so many opportunities to save her be missed? After investigators uncovered the truth, attention quickly turned to the 4 teenagers responsible. They were Hiroshi Miyano, Jo Ogura, Shinji Minato, and Yasushi Watanabe. These 4 were the ones prosecuted as adults. Others who had been involved were dealt with separately in the family courts. As police questioned them, the details of Junko's 40 days in captivity began to emerge. The investigation revealed that this was not a sudden act of violence. It was a prolonged crime involving multiple people, multiple decisions, and repeated opportunities for someone to intervene. The arrests sent shockwaves throughout Japan. Many people struggled to understand how teenagers could commit such a crime. But the anger that followed was not only directed at the perpetrators. It was also directed at the system that would decide their punishment. At the time, Japan's juvenile justice system placed strong emphasis on rehabilitation for offenders under the age of 20. Because the 4 perpetrators were teenagers, they initially fell under these protections. For many members of the public, this became difficult to accept. They questioned how a system designed to give young offenders a chance at rehabilitation could apply to a crime involving such extreme violence. The controversy became one of the biggest discussions surrounding the case. The question was simple but deeply divisive. Should age reduce responsibility when the crime itself is so severe? The perpetrators were not all sentenced in the same way. Their punishments varied depending on their individual involvement and circumstances. Some received prison terms of several years, while others received longer sentences. At the first trial, the ringleader received 17 years, the others less. On appeal, the sentences were raised rather than reduced, the longest to 20 years. The shortest term served was about 7 years. For many people, these punishments felt completely inadequate. The debate surrounding Junko's case continued for decades and became one of the examples frequently cited by those calling for reforms to Japan's juvenile justice laws. The murder of Junko Furuta became more than a criminal case. It became a national conversation about justice, about accountability, and about whether a person's age should determine the consequences of their actions. In the years that followed, the case was often cited in debates about juvenile crime in Japan, though no reform to the law followed directly from it. But behind every legal argument was the same painful reality. A 17-year-old girl had lost her life, and no sentence could ever give her family back what they had lost. More than 3 decades have passed since Junko Furuta's death. The house where she was held is no longer the center of attention. The trial ended years ago. The people responsible were convicted and served their sentences. But the story of Junko Furuta has never disappeared. Some crimes fade with time. Others remain because they force society to confront uncomfortable questions. Junko's case became one of those stories.